everyone. Welcome, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about Jupiter's ingress into Gemini. And I'm here with two really amazing astrologers, Sara Ashley and Brandon from Bramstrology, who's been over here a bunch of times. Welcome, guys. Do you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your practice before we dive in?
Sure. I
Sure.
guess I'll go first. Yeah. So I'm Sara Ashley. I am an intuitive astrologer. I also specialize in past life. So I also give Akashic Records readings and I also do psychic tarot as well. I've been doing this all my life, but professionally for 4 years. After the pandemic happened, I was teaching, a special education teacher, and then well, the pandemic, took a lot of people out of their 9 to 5s, and here I am doing this every day on Instagram. So I'm very happy to be with you guys tonight.
Well, we are so honored to have you here. Brandon, welcome back. You've been here before, but want to reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you again for having me. So my name is Brandon. I live in Chicago. Brandon with Bramstrology. I, much like Sarah, was kind of working my own job, but always kind of been in the astrological closet, if you will, most of my life. And I work specifically with evolutionary astrology, so a bit more with those concepts. And yeah, and I've been on here a couple of times. I really love doing this. This is super fun. I love being able to add to this. I also do more energy healing kind of in the Chicagoland area, Reiki, lilac energy healing, things of that nature. So there's a lot that I could talk about, but I think we'll kind of get into that when we go here. But I'm just happy to be here again. So thanks, Brie.
Awesome. Well, I labeled this conversation off to the races. Yes, after the Lana Del Rey song. This album really, this is what I was listening to at the last time we had this last time we had Jupiter and a Gemini. I was kind of obsessed with this record. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lana gave us another banger during this transit. Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about the Jupiter archetype, everyone. So, Jupiter, expansion, principles, ethics, courts of law. It also rules children because it's how we are fortunate and how we are fertile and how we grow. In ancient times, they saw children as being, more workers in the field, so you make more money. Nowadays, children are just our blessing. Did anybody want to add a little bit about the Jupiter archetype or share anything about Jupiter's energy?
I think with Jupiter, it's one of those planets that, like you had said, it really like rules law, and it does obviously kind of expand a lot of things whenever it's in. It kind of makes that target a lot easier to hit, and so Jupiter does provide blessings. I know we're going to be talking about rising suns a bit later, but it's important to know like whether you are Jupiter ruled, you have prominent Jupiter in your chart, how you are specifically relating to Jupiter, because as we know, Jupiter is going to be going into Gemini as opposed to Taurus, and there's a bunch there. But I think Jupiter, it's a lot about how we find meaning, and depending upon what sign it's in is where we're going to find that. So obviously, once we get to a little bit more, I think there's a lot more to say there. But I just love the meaning searching aspect of Jupiter. I'm Mercury Jupiter myself, so I got a lot going on with myself. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I have Mercury, Jupiter too. So I totally get that. Yeah. I also feel like Jupiter is our wisdom because it helps us look back on the past and also how that past relates to the future, which is the exact conversation that we're having tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Love it.
really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system and rules the ability for things to expand or seem larger than life. Jupiter is our belief systems or principles. It shows us how we expand, take in knowledge, and grow from that experience. Archetypically, Jupiter is expansion, growth, knowledge, morals, abundance, and it's easily the metaphor of the professor, but also it's optimistic. It makes things bigger, so it's the gambler, the risk taker. Jupiter is our morality, and it can really show us what we believe life to be. It's here to experience a wide variety of different types of culture. So it shows us our ability to travel, to grow physically, philosophically, or spiritually. Jupiter is our reasoning. Jupiter rules cultures outside of our own university level learning, the stretching of our boundaries in order to have a higher purpose. And it also rules publishing and broadcasting, the things that are universal. Books really create the ability to connect us to higher beliefs or principles, as do is broadcasting, TV, podcasts. How often do we listen to them in order to grow or change our perspectives on the world around us? We can learn from podcasts, television, documentary style learning. Jupiter really shows us the things that give us a higher purpose and a higher mind. Jupiter rules over luck and fortune. So, some keywords: belief, ethos, culture, principle, growth, expansion, higher learning, travel, and children. Now, let's dive into Gemini. So, Gemini energy is communicative, curious, logical, and flexible. Gemini represents communication of all kinds: speech, letters, messages, writing, emailing, texting, books, sign language, newspapers. When at first we are exchanging ideas with other people, who are the people we're actually sharing these ideas with? We start asking why. This is roughly around 5 years old, and it's our formative elementary school career. So Gemini rules the types of people we're talking to and who we're sharing these ideas with. So our friends, our siblings, our neighbors, the people who are close to us, and the information that we shared that's all like a Gemini principle. There's a quickness that comes with Mercury, and it's because it's like the fastest moving planet when it comes to astrology. So Gemini energy tends to like a variety of different experiences and collects a little bit of information about each thing rather than a whole depth of experience and understanding. So they can have a little bit more of a jack of all trades energy rather than a master of one. Where Taurus can be represented by the twins, because it's a mutable sign, Gemini energy is very changeable. It's the next stage after Taurus. So it's very changeable when we get kind of like bored easily because we're learning all the different things. Think about in grade school. You have 30 minutes of history, 30 minutes of social studies, right? Like you're learning a lot of different things. That's very Gemini. Gemini also rules vehicles, bicycles, subways, and trains. We develop how to walk in the Aries stage, but we generally learn how to ride a tricycle or a bicycle in the Gemini stage. So it's like learning through experience, right? Trial and error too. We are learning to read. We are learning to use our hands. So Gemini rules the hands. It also rules the lungs, the shoulders, the bronchial tubes, and the capillaries. All right, I covered a lot there, but is there anything else anyone wanted to mention about Gemini?
I always think of Gemini as curious George energy, right? They kind of get themselves into trouble accidentally because they're always investigating. So I think with this Jupiter and Gemini, there's going to be a lot of experimentation. That's for sure.
It's a jokester too, so it's like funny and light.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to add too about Gemini is it has a lot to do with like the mere knowledge of sharing our own specific perspective, our own specific story, and kind of the acquisition of that. And so part of like this Jupiter and Gemini transit is likely to bring up very large amounts of information, but then how we digest that, how we kind of go through that. And a lot of like truth seeking, which is the Gemini is the diurnal version of Mercury. So it's the one that goes out during the day and does all the little scavenging of information. So I think it's going to be a really, really active time for those of us that don't have or aren't graced with the mercurial gift that Gemini tends to give. So it's going to be a lot of info, but it's exciting for sure.
All right, so I have some key dates that we're going to start talking about, and then we're going to dive a little bit more into some of the archetypes of the energy. But the first thing that we really wanted to talk about was on June 2nd when we begin this beautiful trine between Jupiter and Pluto. So, who wants to begin?
I guess I'll go first because I'm on top. That's at least that's how it appears to me. I'm like, it's like the Hollywood scores. I'll go first.
Love
in the
it.
order, in the order. So initially when I saw this transit, I got so excited because I feel like it's about time that we have some more, I feel like it's going to be more civil discourse, but with technology. So we know that Pluto and Aquarius is bringing so much more new technology. And I feel like this Jupiter is going to help enhance that, right? Because Jupiter enhances everything. So I know before we started filming, we were talking about like, we know that AI is becoming more and more prevalent. And I think this is going to help people understand each other even more and like break down the barriers of communication, which is amazing. So I think Gemini, of course, learning schools, like there's going to be more knowledge that we're going to be able to digest in those bite-sized pieces, like Brandon was talking about. I think that that's going to be like so accessible to everybody, regardless of where you're from, what language you speak. So it's just going to be like an amazing time of discovery. That's what I'm seeing with this.
Love that. I was also just thinking so many people, because of the pandemic, we saw a lot of argument. We saw a lot of breaking apart of friendships. We saw a lot of breaking apart of certain communities. And I think that this is also just like a very exciting time for people to find their vibe and their tribe too. Like people who have shared value systems, belief systems, and people that are actually you can actually grow with, right? Like that aren't going to keep you stagnant in old beliefs and old structures about self.
Yeah, it feels very much too like the Jupiter Pluto trine can be in relation to that be kind of like a um almost like our message gets out there and our opinion gets out there so quick that we're able to find our tribe so much quicker and mobilize, right? We see this with what's, with how social media, how quick the stuff is able to kind of really rally together communities and a lot of change. And the thing that's really interesting about Pluto in Aquarius. I know it's still like kind of freshly into Aquarius, and we're still trying to understand how we're working with this, right? And every time there's been any like major transit that's really hit that Pluto um, in Gemini, in Taurus, anything throughout the last, however long it's been that Pluto's been in Aquarius, we've seen more like truth of what's happening, of what Pluto in Aquarius is for us individually in our own natal charts as well as collectively. And so I think with Jupiter and Gemini, like you had said earlier, being related to students and related to that kind of like formative information year, I think there's going to be a lot of those people being the voice of the collective or where we're going or kind of breaking, dismantling those systems, but in the same way, evolving the way we view community, the way we view collective consciousness with Aquarius. And I think it's going to be a powerful move for sure, and I am so excited for it. It's so much air energy, which I think we need. We need a lot more of that. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm excited for the air energy part of it because I feel like we've had all this like this Taurus stellium sort of building, and everyone's tired, everyone's exhausted,
Yeah.
everyone. It's just been feeling like I want to get things done, but in order to get things done, we need to connect and we need to talk and we need to get together and get moving. So I think this air energy is really going to be a refresh. It's like opening a window and just realizing how dusty the room has been.
Yeah. And it's allowing us to kind of, I think it's like we see both with Jupiter and with Gemini, um, and even Aquarius, this like aspect of really searching for truth specifically of what the truth is and kind of translating that truth. And I think with these two energies being supportive, we'll see a lot of like Sarah was saying, a lot of those like language barriers kind of going away, or and in a various range of things. Like we were talking prior to recording about like the whole legality system and kind of like how it's going to kind of give. I'm getting this image in my head, even though it's not really Uranian exactly, but like the Promethean kind of idea where like we're giving fire to the gods. It's kind of like they're giving us, yes, everyone has this technology in their hand, this AI thing, and it's how we're using it. And I think we can use it to level the playing field in a lot of various ways in law, in that jargon with language, in coding language. People can code something like that now. Social media captions, there's a lot of stuff there. I think it's really positive movements. And once again, making it really clear what Pluto's doing in Aquarius for the collective, as well as your own natal chart too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, go on chat. You could be like, build me a website, and then it'll just ask colors you want. It'll do all the coding for you.
Amazing. It's just so amazing. And we were talking about before we were filming too about the legality. This is South Node Libra. So there has to be more law that's going to evolve from this. With plagiarism, copying, it's not just revenge porn. I would say it's, recording somebody saying something that they really didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
One of my
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
friends sent this to me the other day, and she's very Aquarian. And you could just take a picture of somebody and you don't even have to have their voice.
Mm-hmm.
And they having a whole entire conversation. And it's wild. And I know there's that case that came out with the pastor's wife, and they're saying this could be the first case that this is an AI 911 call that wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
even her. So
Yep.
we're going to see a lot more
Yep.
legal cases. I think that the legal system has to actually like upgrade and get more experts about this whole entire new science, right? This whole entire new science is expanding
Yeah.
so quickly, like so rapidly, and it's going to open up like new jobs as
Mm-hmm.
well
Mm-hmm.
for scientists in that field. And it's going to be an amazing time to see all of this unfold before our eyes.
Yeah. I think it's gonna also bring up a lot of power, like a lot of power in so many various ways. And the image I keep getting in my head, I don't know why, but because we were talking about schools prior to this or prior to recording, and the image I kept getting was not specifically like school shootings exactly, but kind of this like virus within like their phones or within like students getting to a point that they're surpassing their teachers. Right. You see
Yeah.
that a lot with like Jupiter and like the students, like the philosophers and the student, right? The teacher and the student are mixed.
Uranus thing too. Like I think about, sorry to interrupt, but I'm every member of Nirvana has a Jupiter Uranus aspect in their chart, whether it's a square, conjunction, or like sextile. And I think about when they were trying to do the Smells Like Teen Spirit video, they were inspired. They wanted to do a video of the school getting blown up, and like they wanted the cover of everything to be how to make a bomb.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, because
Yeah.
Kurt like obsessed with this idea of like students taking back the power. It wasn't so much about like
Yeah.
making children violent. It was just like a big fuck you to like the boomers that had raised them, right?
Yeah. And I think with that kind of brings us back to what we were talking about with the Gen Z. And I think this Jupiter, not to go like really, really niche, but like this, this Jupiter Gemini is also aspecting their Pluto in a way that's not a trine. That's not a really supportive flowing aspect. It's in a way that it's like, hey, like we need to teach, we need to take this power back in how we're learning, right? In the Jupiter part of this. And so I think that's really, really, that's a whole conversation in itself, but yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I also just love that, like, when we think of Pluto, like, obviously, like, the plutocracy, too. And there's just, like, great movement right now of, like, blocking, like, celebrity things like that, because, in order to, like, get them to talk about foreign affairs, right? Like, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in the Congo, all of these things. And so it's, like, kind of giving the power back to the people in some ways, which I think is really cool. I also just wonder, like, is there going to be some sort of media that will be developed over like the next year that we haven't even, like, we were talking about this a little bit off air, like something we can't even conceptualize yet. Like we have like everything at our fingertips now. Like if you go on Spotify, you can listen to most audiobooks now for free as long as you have a membership, right? So there's a little bit of like my question about like the legalities of that. Like, are authors now losing money because someone's just going to listen to the audiobook? And then I know that there have a lot of ethical debates about the rights to books and Spotify. That,
royalties,
but I also,
that kind of stuff, right? Like, how do they earn royalties? Because it's like they have to rewrite their contracts because this technology didn't exist until recently.
Yep.
For the audio.
yeah.
So
But I also wonder if that's going to inspire people to create things that haven't even been invented. Like this is a fertile time for artists to create something to like negate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there will also be, sorry to cut you off, but just related to like the Jupiter Pluto thing, I think there's also going to be some very interesting like studies or movement in regards to like technological links to mental health. I think that's going to be a really big part of this transit, not just the Jupiter, in like the Pluto trine, but then also I think there's going to be some interesting developments specifically with like I guess you could say psychotherapy and like in the more like medical time of things, meaning like more like specifically the medication and that pharmaceutical sort of area too, because I think a lot of people with how much information we have, it's like now you can look up online, you can look up, oh, I have this symptom, and there's going to be a myriad of different ways that you can treat that. And I think there's going to be people that are going to be like, I don't want to go into, the pharmaceutical route. There's these options I want to try. There's so much curiosity that we're going to have with Jupiter trine Pluto, and it's going to advance our evolution of our society so quick. And I think the biggest thing I just feel like I need to say about this is with Jupiter trine Pluto is that there's so much information out there, and it's all on our phones, and we have all this technology that there's almost kind of in regards to the celebrity blocking portion, there's almost like a lack of, or like there's no excuse to be held accountable for your role in the information and how it is developing the society at large, right? There's no like real, like you can't say, oh, I didn't know that. Well, yes, you can easily find that information out, right? And I think that's where I think there's going to be this accountability being held for the collective, for us to all move individually from our own story, the Gemini part, to what we can do to help advance society, and hold all of the masses accountable and shift that power dynamic. So that's all I feel like.
What I'm hearing you say is that we're all required to be active participants at this point.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
that's what I'm seeing with this too. I think
Mhm.
people will want to get involved
Mhm.
because with Pluto and Leo generation instilled in us as well, like it's going to happen and we can't control it. It's like this old guard is going to run it regardless. So we're not going to get involved. We're just going to let this old guard run it.
Mhm.
And now with Pluto and Aquarius, we're like, no, like goodbye, old guard. We're all
Mhm.
going to be equal participants in this system. We're going to make sure that
Mhm.
everybody has a voice, Jupiter and Gemini voice, right, in
Mhm.
this system. The other thing that I was hearing while you were talking is that with mental health, I think there will be technologies. So
Mhm.
there can be like what I'm seeing is that a lot of the I would say more metaphysical treatments, right? Like with sound, right? And with like certain waves and certain lights and the red light therapy. There's things, like I said, that are going to be beyond our comprehension. That are coming to help people's mental health that aren't going to feel invasive. It's
Mhm.
not going to necessarily be jarring to their brain chemistry, like some of the medications that big pharma has. And
Mhm.
I think this is a time for all of those companies, all those big pharma, big agri, big food, all of them, I think, are going to just be completely broken down because everybody's going to participate and bring their new technology to the table. And it's like, may the best man win.
Mhm.
That's how it's going to pan out in the future. That's what I'm seeing.
Mhm.
Another thing I was thinking about too with Jupiter I was thinking about like um the troubled teen industry. It was
Mhm.
big for children that were born in the early 80s up until
Mhm.
I would early 1990s. And a lot of those kids are grown now and they've been finding community online and they've been realizing they were indoctrinated into like behavioral cults essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and now I've been seeing, Paris Hilton infamously kind of did speak about this and, she's done a lot of like legal work around this. But I'm wondering, um, just as a person that had that in my background, I started recently connecting with a group of people who went to the same facility as me, and they're taking part in a class action lawsuit to sue this place. And I've been seeing more of that happening recently. And right now, there's a class action lawsuit happening for anyone who's been to any one of those schools. They're trying to get legislation based on it. So I think that that could also be a big thing.
Absolutely. That would be amazing because it needs to have light shed on that. And
Yeah.
Also, I feel like the way that kids are going to learn and how schools are going to be run is changing with this Jupiter trine Pluto, because
Mhm.
Gemini is all about, learning environments and, um, it's not one size fits all. And I
No.
think that's why those industries popped up in the first place, because they were trying to make kids behave in a way like that's one size fits all. And that's not how people's brain chemistry work. We all have different circadian rhythms. We all have different learning styles. And maybe I hope that as a former educator, I can only hope that that's going to become more trendy and more
Mhm.
acceptable in education.
Yeah.
I,
And I think it already has been to a degree, because we see a lot of, not specifically in the education part, but in the media that we have, there's been so many more documentaries. Like you just mentioned one, right? But then there's been that, the one about Nickelodeon.
Mm.
There's been a lot more. I think there'll be a lot more media that progresses that dismantling of what society is, like what it's been and what hasn't worked, and how we've taught our children, or we've utilized these power plays of, whatever it was. I think there's a lot more of those that are kind of popping off too, of more powerful documentaries that are shifting a lot of really big movements behind them. Right,
Yeah,
even the Hunger example of that. I know it's not a documentary, but at this point might as well be.
right. It feels like it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I agree. There's a lot to be said there. So that's June 2nd. We're gonna feel that, this is an outer planet transit. So we feel it for like pretty much the entire month, but this is the day that it actually perfects. So let me know in the comments if something happens, if we made a correct prediction, and I will let everyone know. The next date I wanted to talk about was on August the 17th. And again, we're going to be feeling this one up until there, especially in the beginning of August. I'm sure we're going to start to really feel it. But August 17th is the Jupiter square to Saturn. And what one was it? Was it 2022 that we had the conjunction? Does anyone remember?
You mean, was it the Capricorn one? Is that what
Yeah.
you were referring to?
Yeah.
I think it was
The
2020, right?
There was a Jupiter Saturn conjunction in
Last
Aquarius,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
block.
like the
Yeah.
very end of 2020.
So this is the square. So I kind of feel like if we think about what was happening around that time, that was, the beginning of COVID. This is now challenging. A square is a challenge, right? That kind of tension that was going on in our lives around 2020. Um, who wants to begin to dive into this one? There's so much to say.
What I'm seeing with that, my initial reaction when I was looking at, 2024's astrology and I saw this transit, I said, there is something being revealed here about deception, because of course Saturn and Pisces, and a lot of the lies that we've fallen for as a whole, as a collective. So there might be, because it's Jupiter and it overdoes everything, there could be an overreaction, perhaps that some people will go into the lower vibrations of Gemini energy and have an immature reaction to the gross deceptions that have been pushed on us as a whole. And we're seeing that even now, people have a lot of overreactions to things, and instead of, taking a minute, seeing how all the information pans out instead of getting into their emotions. But we'll see as a whole how people react. But I do feel like something's going to be revealed that's going to put people over the top. That's what I'm seeing initially with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well, in addition to that, I think with the Jupiter Saturn, it does have this similar quality, kind of around COVID, because right around COVID as well, we had, or 2020, when we had the conjunction, we had the North Node in Gemini as well. And I remember during that time there was a lot of discernment lessons around what's like, what side do you stand on this whole conversation? What is your truth, right? And we see that, and I think we see that have happened, during 2020 when the nodes were in Gemini, but now Jupiter's there. Now Jupiter's like, okay, now we have to teach this. Now the people that were preaching those things, or the law that wasn't in put in, or various things that people were preaching about the ways that this is going to go or this isn't going to go. I think this is where Jupiter, especially with the square to Saturn, is going to really bring out that truth, like you said. And it is also probably one of the things that I felt a little bit earlier, like even before we started recording, like a while ago, when I looked at this, was the weird I don't want to say false prophet, but that's not really what I'm getting at, but more of like those like scam spiritualists kind of energy, right? Because we have this like Saturn and Jupiter sign looking at Jupiter, and Jupiter is not really that that great. It's kind of the trickster energy in Gemini, right? And so it can have this kind of like tension of like what is real, what is not. And I think a lot of it is we have to take our own due diligence to find our own truth, Jupiter Gemini, to be able to navigate these energetic mental health, spiritual health spaces that are related to Saturn and Pisces. And yes, there's going to be something related to like society at large, Saturn and all that stuff kind of pressuring it. But I think there is likely something around what is the actual truth, because even Saturn and Pisces it's kind of hard to really delineate what that is, because we've had Saturn and Saturn signs for so long. So
I almost think about the people that like maneuver therapy in order, like, remember the Jonah Hill incident where he was like using the term boundaries to describe something that was just a power struggle. Like, I almost like it could be, a little bit of that,
Yeah.
And people do that. I think that they're healing, they're growing, but really reading memes on the internet from.
And I think with Jupiter and Gemini, and I know, Sarah, you also have Mercury Jupiter as well. Like, I think there's this aspect with Jupiter Gemini where people that have that, we are always looking for what is the truth, right? We're like, there's all this information out there. What is the actual truth? And I think there's going to be quite a lot of, and I'm sure we run into this, all three of us in this industry, where there's people that are just spouting stuff and not understanding the weight of what they're spouting. And I think with Saturn square that, there's going to be some, like, not legislation really, but some like authoritative, sort of not really crackdown, but kind of more pressure put on to have those or those specific
protocol. Like
protocol.
protocol?
Yeah. Like specific like registration protocol, ethics boards, things like that around, the media and the things that we're doing, and the things we're consuming. Because, and I'm sure most of us are annoyed with this, like myself, where we can go online and you go on TikTok or you go on these places where people have picked up 1 or 2 astrology books and now they're counseling people, but they have no background in counseling. And it's causing a whole slew of mental health defects or slew of issues because of the power of our own speech with Jupiter Gemini, or Jupiter Mercury in general, and knowing to be accountable for that. And I think Saturn is forcing that accountability of how this affects your spiritual health, energetic health. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a uptick in the necessity of having those two things work together. And obviously it's going to be a square, so kind of hard to do that.
Yeah. And I'm really glad we're having that. Go ahead, B. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We both talked at the same time. I apologize.
You're fine.
I was thinking about like that Teal Swan documentary that came out. Are you guys?
Yes, very familiar.
That's kind of the energy I think you guys are describing. If you guys don't know, Teal Swan is a very questionably dangerous person in the community. There's a documentary about, I forget, does anyone remember the name of that documentary?
I don't remember. Do you remember?
It's called The Deep End.
Okay. Yeah.
And then she claims it's the way they edited it, but having some similar experiences, and of course we're not going to name names on here, with some people that are not as famous or infamous as her, I would say that they edited it the way they needed to, because it's what she was doing, in my opinion, in my viewpoint.
I heard anytime one is telling people who are suicidal to imagine their own deaths, as a mechanism. Yeah,
I'm
just
pretty sure there was like I think she got like a cease and desist order from one of the states here in Utah, and she went and moved her business to Costa Rica to like evade the American government for trying to tell her to stop practicing psychiatry without a license.
Well, that's a red flag.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of stuff within the Jupiter Saturn that can be spoken to with that specific experience, and I think that if I remember correctly, I think she's a Gemini sun as well.
Yeah,
yes.
you're right. You're right.
And I think she might have Gemini North Node too, which even more is. I think she has a weird Jupiter as well, from what I remembered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something. What was it? What was it? I had it on the tip of my tongue. I'm so sorry, guys. I wonder if this is also gonna be like blowback for like saying things that you shouldn't have said. Like, I want to go here and just kind of give you some archetypal
Kanye
people.
West right there. Blowback.
The king of mouth, Kanye West, also a Gemini, right? So it's like, think about, I mean, Jupiter and Gemini at its best has the ability, like Bjork, to give you these big realizations, like sit with homogenic. Like, homogenic is like realization after realization. How could I be so immature to think that he could replace the missing elements in me? That's like the highest octave of Jupiter and Gemini, like being able to take these big truths and like not dumb them down, but make them simple enough that everybody can consume them and understand them. And I think the octave of that is like anything out of Kanye West mess at this point, right?
Yeah. I think when we talk about like celebrities that have Jupiter and Gemini, one of the things that I just found this out recently, because of course everyone's talking about Jupiter and Gemini, right? There is this the Streisand effect. Barbara Streisand has Jupiter and Gemini. And
Okay.
the whole premise of what the Streisand effect was it was essentially that she had something that she didn't want to, like a photo or something that was published that she didn't want to bring attention to, and she announced that. But then doing that, it ended up like specifically making it happen even more, right? So with Jupiter Gemini, we can see an expansiveness of like obviously gossip, but an expansiveness of information that not necessarily we don't want out there, but like the wrong branding or the wrong messaging where it's like, oh, I guess it's this thing, and this is what we're looking at. It's almost like a redirection. Like it's like Jupiter will focus or expand something that may seem irrelevant that you didn't want to actually expand, right? Or you didn't want that to be the focal point of a conversation, right? That's kind of what I think. It's interesting when we think about Jupiter and Gemini individuals, because it promises a large message, right?
Yeah. I think it's people, they're funny too, Jupiter and Gemini people, right? Like they're supposed to be funny because they're whimsical. So people just like pick up on something that they said that was peculiar, if you will, and then just expand the hell out of it and make it the running joke for God knows how long.
Yeah. It's a very like, just like you just say something and it just goes really large, right? As Mercury Jupiter person. Yeah, I know. Mercury Jupiter person is just like it just goes and it just keeps going, right? Like it's just when you have, and it's weird because I have Mercury Jupiter myself, like in the most Mercury Jupiter way outside of this. And so it's weird to have Jupiter and Gemini because it's like feels very overwhelmingly similar to me.
It does. It's the same flavor.
Yeah, but it's just an overwhelm of information. So it's a lot of activity. Too much.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show some core things that happened during the last transit. So the last period of Jupiter and Gemini was from June 2012 to June 2013. So you might want to think about where Gemini is in your chart and what kind of things were happening, maybe how Mercury was activated at that time. Some interesting things that I was able to find that it will be easy. It'll be interesting to see like how this is observed through multi-generations, right? So the first one, kind of poopy. Donald Trump, he trademarks "Make America Great Again." And this is brought on by Mitt Romney. Remember Mitt Romney, his loss. So on November the 7th, 2012, he trademarked "Make America Great Again."
And he's a Gemini. Isn't Trump a Gemini? There you go.
There you go. So he, publishing, trademark, right? Ownership of some stupid words. Anyway, Justin Bieber releases his album Believe, very Jupiterian. Now we see him become a father, kind of exciting. Prince William and Kate announced the royal pregnancy. So, obviously she's dealing with a lot of health concerns right now, praying for her.
Fertility. Yeah.
Oh, a big thing was the Summer Olympics, and here we have the Summer Olympics happening again in Paris this year. So this was a big year for the Summer Olympics. So I don't know, are you guys Olympics fans? Do you watch the Olympics?
Mm-mm.
Do you have any thoughts on the Olympics? None.
This is kind of a little bit more morbid, but I feel like it is my Plutonian nature bringing this out. So this is not really a fun fact, but one of the facts that I've been able to find out about the Olympics is the Olympics in specific are, and this is not to fearmonger, simply just to bring up a fact of the importance of bringing awareness to this. Once again, Jupiter, Gemini, Pluto, trine Pluto, right? It is the biggest event that is related to human and sex trafficking. The biggest global event related to that. And there are so many things that happen that we are not able to see in that. And I think because of the Saturn square to Jupiter and the Jupiter trine Pluto that we just mentioned, there will be more exposing of that specific happening, especially considering Saturn and Pisces rules like refugees, foreign people, foreign lands, things of that nature. And Jupiter and Gemini, like we already discussed, rules children, right? Rules those and those sorts of things. I know. And
We're already how that works, like with the Diddy stuff, with the Nickelodeon stuff. Like we have a better understanding now of those things.
Yeah. So I do want to add to that just one more thing, just to kind of get out of the fear-mongering place and the empowerment place, not do the disempowerment thing. So the reason I know that information is because I actually work with a colleague of mine in the mental health space that actually runs her own nonprofit that will be going internationally, that specifically works on educating larger institutions and larger agencies on how to deal with human and sex trafficking throughout the entire world, essentially. So I know that there are advocates out there. There are many people speaking about this. Obviously, there was a documentary that was very much pushed back. I think it was last year or so, related to this topic. But there are many people fighting for that very, 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 very important thing within our humanity and within our protection of humanity and the empowerment of humanity. So something I felt that I needed to bring up.
Yeah, that's definitely worth sharing and talking about. With people being from all over the country, it's such as exciting as that is, it's overwhelming. Like the danger of that. Also, just even people congregating, like that's a big event. Like if you wanted to cause some sort of event in world history, that would be kind of people have historically done that, right? Like there have been event things like that.
1996, right? Was it 96 in Atlanta? There was that bombing and they accused Richard Jewell. They made the movie about it and it didn't have anything to do with it and it ruined his life.
Like a false event.
Yeah.
Well, Gemini is games, so let the summer games begin. Okay, so the VMA. Oh, this is a fun one. The VMAs that year opened up with Rihanna, and it was like an Indiana Jones themes. Do you guys remember this?
I never really watched it.
Yeah,
it's okay. It was like a big, it was like We Found Love. Remember the song We Found Love?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Place that seems very Jupiterian. We found love in a hopeless place. So that was like a big year. Also, there was a lot of like animal prints that year, and I'm starting to see the return of animal prints again.
Body. So gaudy.
Yeah. Especially with the mob wife thing coming back, that feels pretty on point. So the patterns get bolder. I've been seeing a lot more like bright blues and bright yellows, and it like kind of gives this like kind of 50s nostalgic kind of vibe that I could see kind of coming back. That was really popular in 2012. Especially like the Lana Del Rey cover. Kim Jong-un is officially appointed supreme leader of North Korea. and given the rank of marshal in the Korean People's Army during this time. So we might have our eyes on North Korea during this time. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or it's okay if you don't.
I do, but go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about if, you know, thou who shall not be named gets reelected, right? That could definitely stir the pot with this one. That's what I thought just initially. And because thou who shall not be named is a Gemini and Jupiter will be on his sun, he might feel more emboldened in his ego more than ever to go toe to toe again with him. That's my first initial thought. What were you going to say, Brandon?
I was just gonna say that I think it's adding to what you said. I think there is a lot of tensions because we think about once again Jupiter ruling how you're teaching somebody, and if you're appointed during a Jupiter Gemini period as like teaching someone, there may be difficulty in your messaging, or maybe like kind of like we were talking about, where the message just gets out there and it's not really the right thing to be teaching, right? And so I think that with this being the Jupiter return for specifically that specific thing, very first Jupiter return, it's going to bring back those, I don't want to say the lies or the deceit or the things that were said in that 12-year time span. And Jupiter's going to say, okay, are you still deserving of having more of this or less of this, right? And especially because once again, Saturn in Pisces is going to pressure that, right? There's going to be something around that if that were to happen. I just think there's because it's a Jupiter return of an appointment or like an appointed leader, there's going to be some interesting things that he may need to hold himself accountable for what he was teaching.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but there was some illegal video that came out of child labor in North Korea and it broke my heart. Like it was the conditions these people live under. It's hard not to like feel very emotional.
Yeah, I read a book about this guy who escaped North Korea. And there's very few escapees. So I know there's a female who speaks out a lot.
Yeah.
She's like in her early 30s. I can't recall her name right now. And then there was a male, and it was just awful. How cruel he grew up. I mean, it was just, I recommend that people read it definitely because it gives you a lens as to what's going on over there and how just it's unimaginable. And I think everybody should read that book. And it's like he could never acclimate to free society. And it was like 5 years post publishing, and the afterward, he was in South Korea and he even went to America, and he just can't acclimate. He just can't. Side note, but still.
I just looked up King Jong-un's chart actually, and it turns out he has his North Node in Gemini. And at the time that this specific appointment happened, the supreme leader happened, was actually also during his Saturn return. So there's definitely some very interesting timing for him in specific. And that Jupiter going back on the North Node is kind of like, once again, when we talk about when the North Node was in Gemini last, it was that discernment, that truth. What are you actually saying? What is your story? How are you affecting these masses? And we see that also with thou who shall not be named as well with the North Node in Gemini.
Yeah. When you think about the potential for our freedoms to be like Trump, I named him. I'm sorry I named him. The Aquarius named him. I don't think anyone who's watching this is a Trump supporter. If you are, I don't know why you're watching this channel. But like I kind of feel like also it's like when you think about the fact he called Kim Jong-un he liked the way that he ran North Korea. When you think about the potential freedoms that could be taken away if that does happen, that's really overwhelming, you know?
Yeah. Didn't
Hopefully
he
that's
call
the
him a
case.
good guy too? He's like, he's a great guy or a very good guy or terrific, whatever, of hyperbole he
Or
uses.
And I
What
think
was
that,
his man's name? I forget the man's name. But he was like, he went to North Korea and he was told not to go into a certain level of the hotel room, and he did, and he stole propaganda, and then they got him
oh,
on. No, what was his name? Do you remember this guy's name? Like, I remember
Face,
he
but I can't see his name. I know he died and it was just tragic.
mhm.
totally 100%.
Mhm.
All right,
Just, oh, I
on to
wanted
more
one more.
topics. Peplum made a comeback in the summer of 2012. I wonder if we'll see some Peplum coming back. Um,
Ooh, I like this.
Lana Del Rey inspires the theme of 50s American dream, rock and roll, 50s cat eye sunglasses, preppy pieces, retro car prints, cheerleader midriffs, bright scarlet, cobalt blue, which we're already starting to see come back, turquoise and green, polished looks and fabrics, heeled mules, and clickety clack Marilyn Monroe.
We
I
can
think
always
we're
use some
trying
Marilyn
some
Monroe
of
in
that
inspo.
back.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I noticed today when I was out and about is that a lot of the cars that are coming out this year have really bold colors. And they're colors I haven't seen in cars in years. They are more of like those 1950s color. Like there is like a cobalt blue that's coming out. And then I saw some car that was like a yellow tone, but it wasn't like a bright like taxi cab yellow. It was more like a mustard yellow. So those are those like the 1950s palette in itself. I see it coming back.
I
Hmm.
love that, especially with the millennial gray. Like, can we get rid of that?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Boring.
Yeah.
As you
It's
can
very,
tell,
Well,
I don't like boring. Everything
it's
is
it's very interesting because as it relates to that, Sarah, I don't know how you sparked this in my brain, but it kind of brought up the whole thing that they speak about how like when you're looking for a yellow car, you're going to find his yellow cars, right? That whole thing. And I think with Jupiter and Gemini, we're going to see that there's going to be a lot of attention grabbing stuff, right? A lot of where do we put our attention. And I think with Jupiter and Gemini, we can see over the course of this time that if we put our focus on some information in specific, that will manifest very rapidly in various amounts of ways. And I think there's going to be a lot of attention. Like we're definitely realizing a lot more of like our currency is our attention.
yeah.
And I think that's gonna be more rampant as technology obviously becomes more integrated into our lives.
I see that. It's like that whole what I'm seeing when you said that, like that whole pop art movement. Just
Mm-hmm.
like
yeah,
Warhol pop art movement. I could see that coming into um like a different version, if you will. I
Yeah.
could see that coming back in some type of way.
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny. My cousin, who I haven't seen in a really long time, she messaged me. She's going to be in town just as like Jupiter goes into Gemini and wants to see me. And I was like, how literal is this? So that's another thing, just signing off. Travel to see your friends, travel to see your cousins, travel to see your siblings. This is a wonderful time to connect with people that you love. So
Mm-hmm.
like take that trip to Denver. Take that trip to Sedona. If you have a friend there, there's somewhere you ever wanted to go. You get to see someone you love, you get to connect with the people that you love, and you get to go somewhere cool.
Road trips.
Yeah, trips are very much this energy.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else anyone wanted to share or any final thoughts? Did we cover everything?
I think with Jupiter and Gemini, there's always more to cover information wise.
Well,
Yeah.
um, well, I would just like to say thank you guys for coming and to share this time with me. How could everyone find your work? What are you guys promoting right now? Let me know.
So my website, saraashley.astrology.com. I'm about to offer coaching sessions as well. So people want to work with me to understand more about themselves. And I'm all about helping people live in their highest potential using their charts. So about to offer that. That's going to be on my website. I actually just put it up today, but I haven't advertised it yet because I'm kind of taking a digital detox this week, except to be with you guys because it's fun instead
Yeah.
of pretty sure because it's a lot more fun. And see Jupiter and Gemini. congregating with friends and talking with friends and educating the collective. But yeah, that's how you can find me. And then Sara Ashley Astrology on Instagram, blue check mark. If it doesn't have a blue check mark, it's not me. It's some imposter. I would never hit you up for a reading. All that stuff. Don't fall for it. Don't give somebody with my post, hello beloved, any money. I'm not going to give it back to you.
I can't stand those.
Congratulations. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. What are you doing right now?
So I am doing a lot more specifically private client work. I did a lot of stuff within the Chicagoland area for quite a long time. I'm taking a lot more of like a kind of like Sarah was saying, like a digital detox and doing more family work. My website is bramstrology.com. I'm going to be doing kind of putting more courses out, more webinars, things like that. I'll be doing more like kind of evergreen content, things of that nature, just to kind of do more of the private work that I need to do for my private clients here. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well with Bramstrology. I do not have the blue check mark. So if you just have to know which one's me, I think you'll figure that out pretty quick. But
Discernment.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time and for being a member here. And I hope to have you guys back soon. Anytime you want to collaborate, I'm here to do so. Have a great evening and enjoy your transit of Jupiter into Gemini.